Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company started by Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, and we thank Joe Ross for sponsoring this podcast. You can listen to our podcast on all the major podcast platforms. If you're watching it on YouTube right now, you can hit the bell for notifications for future podcasts, and you can also give this video a like. And we bring in our special guest today, Greg Washington, former Army football captain. Thanks for joining us today, Greg.
Hey, Sal, how's it going?
Really good, really good. I think it was last week or maybe a couple weeks ago, I was sent a direct message on Twitter and told me a little bit about what you're doing, a great cause you're doing here, and I wanted to talk to you about that. Also wanted to talk to you about your days as an Army football player, and I guess first off, we usually start off with like how you got to West Point, how you ended up at Army. And if you could just give us like a little bit of history on how that happened, because you were able to have a really fantastic career where you are still in like the top 5 for career tackles in Academy history.
Indeed. So it's a story in itself. My rec football coach from when I was 9 years old had been following me from rec on up to high school. And I remember my senior year, he calls me after the season and he's like, he asked me, what were my plans for school? What did I think about West Point? I told him I'd never heard of it before, but, I'll look into it. And we ended up having a conversation. He was like, hey, look, if we can get you into West Point, he was like, promise me one thing, you won't quit. He said, I had a chance to go. I chose love instead. And he was like, that's been my one regret my whole life. And so I made a promise. I told him if I get to West Point, I told him I wouldn't quit. And before that, I didn't want my mom to have to pay for me to go to school. My plan was to do Marine ROTC at NC State, study engineer, play football there, and go into the Marines once I graduated. And within a week time frame, my rec football coach called me, and one of the recruiters from West Point was actually from my hometown. Wow. And we had such an amazing season. We were one game away from the state championship that, I made a name for myself. I played in high school. In one game, I ended up getting a touchdown in 3 positions: running back, safety, and quarterback. And so, they came, they recruited. I said yes. After my mom went up to West Point and got to see the facility and the whole nine, I remember her telling Coach Smith, she was like, you better take care of my baby. I wasn't really sure about him going into the military, but don't make me have to come back up here. And he was like, okay, I got him. Don't worry. He's in good hands. And the rest was history.
Wow. Were you a direct admit or did you do the prep school?
I did the prep school. I did the prep school for a number of reasons. Of course, it's like your red shirt year for football. So it allowed me to get bigger, faster, stronger, and to have another year of playing under my belt. And then it also helped prepare me for what military life or what life was going to be at West Point. So I strongly encourage anybody that wants to go to the academy to go through the prep school, because it's a great transitioning period as well.
Yeah, you did have like some sort of a boot camp at prep school, or no?
Yeah. You did. When I was at the prep school, the prep school was in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And so we would go to Fort Dix for training. We were literally privates because we had to enlist while we were at the prep school. And so we held that status and we did our training, and we did our year, as prepsters, and then went on to West Point.
Then, I mean, when you get to West Point, talk about like the time that you were able to get on the field. I mean, how early were you able to get on the field, and what kind of impact you were able to make, in your career?
Well, at the prep school, I played linebacker and safety. When I graduated from high school, I probably weighed 185 pounds. By the time I got to the prep school, I was 205. And by the time I got to my freshman year or prep plebe year at West Point, I was 215, 218. And so I got a chance to put on some good weight. I got to see a lot of growth. And I remember playing in a couple of games where it was that first taste of like Army versus Air Force or Army versus Navy. And I remember I had been playing outside linebacker for most of the year, and our safety went down. And so the coach was like, hey, we need you to play safety, and this is what I'm going to teach you. And so within, that week, he taught me the scheme to play safety, and I ended up having like a career, like 19 tackles that game,
Wow.
just from playing safety. And so when I got up to West Point, I was one of the few freshmen, or we call them plebes, that actually got to letter my freshman year. So I was able to directly get on the field, me and a couple other guys. And my freshman year was the time that we had beat Navy before they went on that long winning streak.
What was that like freshman year for you to be a part of that right away and get that win over, a rival?
I mean, it helped strengthen the bond of, just the team in general. They also said, when you win Army-Navy game, it's like the whole school year from there on out, just gets better. and it really does. And so I think we were able to get recognized a little bit early. We definitely got privileges, or at least got noticed, right, by the upper class for, the job well done. And it was just amazing to be able to letter, right, to say that you earned, your letters in Army football.
Yeah, I mean that victory, like you said, was the last for Army until now, where it seems like now they have Navy's number, right? I mean, the won 3 of the last 4 Commander-in-Chief's trophies, and just seem to be in the. What's it like now to follow the team and have to see that success against the the Air Force, Navy and Air Force?
I am so excited for the cadets up there and for the football team, because I mean, what a time to be alive, especially with Army football, because we are winning games. We are creating leaders and going out here and fighting our nation's wars and winning. And I mean, like, I always tell the guys, I'm like, hey, look, I got 1 or 2 more series left in me. Now I probably got about 4 since I started doing this walk. So I'm definitely in shape, but I'm happy for them. I love the fact that the Commander-in-Chief trophy has been sitting at home with us. And so that's where it needs to be. It needs to stay.
Yeah, when you talk about, they're out there winning football games. They're out there, they're going to graduate West Point, and then they're going to fight, the wars also. I know that, you served right after your life after football was right, pretty much right into being an officer, right? And you served 7 years in the Army. So
yeah, I did. Playing football, getting a chance to be a team captain, being a leader amongst leaders, that was an honor, and that helped prepare me for what I was going to face as a leader in the Army. And so, of course, I was a freshman when 9/11 happened, and so I knew me and my class were going to fight. And I commissioned as an infantry officer, and was stationed in Germany, deployed Afghanistan and Iraq. And and was in for 7 years before I had to hang up the hat. And so I enjoyed my time in. I enjoyed West Point. It's an institution. It's a safe haven. It's a safe place because I got to go there and learn my craft, to play football. I had a chance to go play in the NFL. I was in there in the draft in 2005 as well, and it was a win-win, like all around. Um, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Were you invited to any like rookie camps in the NFL or?
No, I didn't make it. I didn't make it that far. Um, I got to play in the East-West Shrine game and
Nice.
had a couple of teams that were looking at me from that standpoint. But just like any service academy, when you go into your senior year at West Point, or really your junior year, that's when your commitments start. And so upon graduation, you have this 5-year commitment to the military to serve on active duty.
Yeah.
And so there weren't strong policies in place to do otherwise. But like I said, it was definitely one of those where we were starting to make a name for ourselves. We had Bobby Ross as our head coach, and what he did for the program and how he turned it around and got the academy to see, the big picture, and also got the players to see their big picture as well when it comes to leading and being a part of something special with Army football and the Army in general. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was. Bobby Ross had a short stay at West Point, but what was it like to play for a coach of that caliber who had the NFL experience to go along with a pretty solid college career too?
Man, Coach Ross was one of my favorite football coaches I ever played for. His leadership, his knowledge of the game. I mean, it was phenomenal. I remember watching film, and we were going through, and the coaches, they were watching, film. And of course, you got to rewind it about 5 or 6 times so that you can see all the different parts of the game. And I remember Coach Ross, he walks in, he looks at the film one time, and he just breaks down the whole thing. And coaches are like, holy shit. We on the set and try, break this thing down, and he gets it in one take. And I mean, he's just an amazing person, and just a really good guy and a really good leader when it came to being a coach and understanding the difficulties of being an Army football player and being a cadet.
Yeah, you kind of wish maybe if he would have got to Army a little bit earlier in his career. I mean, it was a little bit toward the tail end there where he I guess he decided to, step away from the game for a little bit. And man, who knows? I mean, because it seemed like that you guys were getting talent there, no doubt, with him there, right? I mean, just to have his name going out there and recruiting was probably bringing in some really talented players too. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was able to kickstart a lot of things for us, especially policy-wise. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure if some of the players that had the chance to play in the NFL now would have been able to make it.
yeah.
Because he definitely helped push and help the academy see the light. And I mean, it is one of those difficult situations because we all know that we didn't go to the academy, with the dream of I'm gonna leave and then go play football or play professional. We know that our commitment first is to our service.
Yep.
And so being able to pull a program or bring something together where we can still serve and still live out that childhood dream. I know that made a difference for a lot of us, for a lot of guys.
Do you have any thoughts about where it is right now with the policy and how, Army and Air Force players are now being able to just go directly to the pros and then push that, service commitment until their careers are over, if whenever they're not playing professional sports?
Yeah, that it makes sense, because when you look at the average lifespan of a NFL or professional player, on average it's 3 to 5 years, right? And so, and then the 5 years is on the long end, and so to be able to have these great Americans to go off, be able to live their dream, and then come back and serve out their commitment. I don't see nothing wrong with it, especially depending on where we're at as a nation, and what the needs of the military or the Army are.
No doubt, no doubt. So today you were telling me you were in Augusta Georgia, right? I'm guessing.
Yep, I'm in Augusta, Georgia, at Fort Gordon.
Oh wow!
I just hosted one of our mental health rallies. So what I am doing is I am walking 1,800 miles to raise awareness for the increasing suicide rate amongst our veterans and our youth. And so I started at Mount Bayou, Mississippi. I'm headed to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then I'm going to make my way on up to West Point, New York. And so it's 1,800 miles, 11 states, 25 cities. And each one of these cities that I'm stopping in, we're hosting these mental health rallies, connecting communities to local and state resources. And so why am I doing this? There have been more veterans to die by suicide from 2007 till now than those that have died in the Vietnam War. There's a rate of 22 vets die a day by suicide, and that rate's increasing. The last I heard, it was right at 28. And if you didn't know, the second leading cause of death amongst our adolescents is suicide. And so with a lot of soldiers coming home from war, having deployed multiple times, and with this pandemic that's been going on, and just the whole state of the world, in the US, people are suffering in silence. And so this walk is a call to action, one, to break down those stigmas when it comes to mental health and talking about it, and two, to get people to start their own journeys to heal. I was almost one of those vets that died a day by suicide. And I thought, my transition, if I'm a leader, and even though I come from a good background, and if my transition was that hard as a leader, I can only imagine what it's like for other military personnel that don't have the resources nor the tribe to connect to get help. And so I started this nonprofit, and we started this effort. And everywhere I go, we're having these tough conversations, right? And I challenge people. The same way my baby cousin called me in my darkest hour, just because she was thinking about me and wanted to invite me out. I'm challenging people to be that angel for someone else. Think of one person, one family member, one loved one, one friend, one battle buddy that you haven't talked to in a while, and just check in. Because you never know what that phone call will do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your message is at these rallies, but I guess there it is right there, right? Just you beat me to the punch there. But just, I mean, what are the turnouts like? And I mean, when you leave there, I mean, you got to have a pretty good feeling in you that you know you're getting people together to talk about a very important subject, right? Very important
It
message and
is.
talk.
It is. It's a great feeling. It's one of those because when I share my story and when I talk about others, I always leave them with, suicide is real. It's not the answer. It never is, and it never will be. And that you need to have a plan, right? And so the plan is, who are your three battle buddies, your three good friends that in your darkest hour or just when you need them, you can call and they can talk you off the ledge? Do you have the number to your primary care provider or healthcare provider? And at the very least, do you have the number to the crisis hotline? Right? Because a lot of us carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. And we let these daily problems build and build to the point where we can no longer, deal with it. And everybody has a breaking point. And so before you even get to that breaking point, let's do some preventive maintenance and check in. And if you are there, look, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah. Are there people that maybe that you served with, or maybe even former teammates that you've, have been given advice to, or maybe were their buddies, so to speak, to be in case they needed anything? I'm sure that you probably have stepped up and done that too, right?
Oh, we have. I mean, when you look at Army football, it is a brotherhood. And we are there for each other. I mean, I got a group of guys now that every week we get on a duo and we do a video check-in. We just say, hey, what's up? What we going through? And just talk. And it's so good to catch up because, everybody's going through their own issues. And normally, you keep your head down and you drive on. So to come up, to check in, to breathe a little bit means a lot. I started this walk in April. I started it my birthday weekend. May 2nd was my birthday. And I started it then. 2 months prior to that, 2 or 3 months prior to that, I witnessed a former teammate last moments on Facebook Live. He had been struggling with a drug addiction, and 2 months prior, we had talked. And he reached out to me, and he was like, G, he was like, man, can we talk? Of course, I was struggling with addiction. I'm in this program now, and I'm at the point of making amends. And so he was like, I did you wrong, and I want to make amends, and I wanted to say thank you for being you. And so we shared that moment. And it was one thing to talk about your scars. It's another thing to talk about your wounds. And so I host a podcast called Guards Down where people share their stories about their PTSD and their grief experience and what they went through. And the hopes is having conversations that may help other people put some tools in their tool bags that'll help them fight another day. And I was nervous. I was afraid to have this conversation with him because I felt like it was too close to home to what he was doing, and I didn't want him to have, a relapse or anything. And you fast forward 2 months later, and I still remember seeing the phone drop on live as what happened started to take effect. And I told myself and I told my team, I was like, look, I know we've been preparing for this walk, and I know we said, we needed more time to get it done, to plan it out. But I was like, if I have to wait another 365 days and 22 vets die a day from suicide, that's one too many. I got to move. I got to go now. And so I started walking. I didn't think I was going to have much support, let alone any, just because nothing was planned out. And when I tell you my family got behind me, when I tell you my mentor, retired 3-star General William Lennox, who was a superintendent at West Point when I was there.
Yep.
When he heard what I was doing, he said, Greg, give me a couple of days. I'm going to make some phone calls. My Army football brothers, I mean, when you reach out, when you let people know, like the honest, the real part about you, and not just anybody, but your true battle buddies, things will start to move in such a way that you just have to, believe in something higher than yourself. And that's what it's been. That's what it's felt like. And so everybody I talked to, I challenged them to reach out and do that check-in. And I challenged them to ensure that they got a game plan.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, like you talked about when you decide, okay, I gotta get this walk going. I really need to push out awareness more. And when you can call a guy like or contact a guy like General Lennox and him to move some mountains for you, so to speak, in a couple of days and just get things going. I mean, man, just that support. Gotta actually inspire. It's inspiring, isn't it? What you're doing 100%, Greg, is 100% inspiring to me, right? And then when you can get that, it seems like now you got a group to also be behind you with it too. So the message maybe can be even a little, maybe stronger too. So,
indeed, and I mean that is exactly what it is. And I remember asking, Bill, I was like, sir, how did you do it at West Point? Every weekend, we had people coming to you, asking you the same questions over and over about the academy, about your philosophy of leadership, and how and what you was doing to lead West Point in the direction you was leading. And he was like, Greg, that was it. He was like, that was my passion. He was like, I believed in the cadets and I believed in what we were doing. And so being able to have these conversations, whether it's with one person or 1,000 people over and over, I'm willing to do it. And that's been my passion as well. I don't want to lose another service member. You have these young men and women that honorably raised their hand and said, I'll serve and protect our country. And they go through things, having been deployed, having been at war, and they come home not knowing who and where to turn to. And so I'm raising support, I'm raising effort. Like I tell anyone, if you're suffering, if you don't have a tribe to connect to, and you're dealing with something, you don't have to deal with it alone. I'll walk to you. That's how passionate I am about it. And so I want people to know that suicide is not the way. It never is. It never will be. And that it is okay to reach out and get help.
yeah, I was reading a write up on you talking about your walk, and at first I'm like, wait, maybe this is his way a little bit to, maybe this was not only for just to bring awareness, but maybe it was a little bit also for you for you too. But now it seems like, I mean, this is so much bigger than anything when I was reading can think of, just because of everybody that is involved in this, right? Just from the soldiers coming back, from their families, and just these rallies, and like just for you to stop in all these cities and get that message out is really encouraging. And what's kind of next? What's after Augusta? Where are you headed next?
Well, I'm over 450 miles in. I average about 15 to 18 miles a day. But I stop in these cities to host the rallies. So next, I'll be moving through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then on up the East Coast. The goal is to make it to West Point by September 11th, which would be our first home Army football game. September is Suicide Prevention Month. I'll get to walk through New York City, and it'll be my first time I'll be able to bring myself to go see the memorial site for the Twin Towers.
Mm.
And I'm hoping to be able to make it to the cadets, because for these next generation of leaders, I want them to know that they come from a very strong background and a supportive background, that they have an awesome task ahead of them, because they'll be leading soldiers that have had multiple deployments and that'll be coming back home. And so they have to be mentally ready and prepared themselves, and they have to know the tools and the resources available to ensure that they can help others.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you think of, okay, what West Point just had a graduation a few weeks ago, and these guys and girls are commissioned to become second lieutenants, and yes, they're going to be leading, units and soldiers, and there's a lot more to that than just leading, just be giving orders, right? There's a lot more to that. There's a lot of there's a lot of personal relationships that are also built through that, right? I mean, and to connect in a certain way where those soldiers under you feel like that they can go to you if something happens that they need to talk about is really important. That sometimes might get overlooked in that next journey for West Point graduates.
Correct. And I'll share a quick story before we end. But you got to do more than care. You got to show up. And I'm reminded of a soldier that I spoke with, and he shared his story. And he told me how he was deployed, and one of his guys got shot right in front of him, and it messed him up. And when he came home, his family was like, "Oh, you need help." And when he finally heard them and accepted, he was like, "Okay, well, come with me." And he was like, "Oh no, that's not me. That's too much out of my lane. But you go though." And so he had to muster up the courage to go alone. But then the soldier turned around, and when he saw that his soldiers needed help, right? Not only did he care enough to say something about it, but he did something about it. He said, "Look, you need help, but I'm gonna go down here with you." And he went down to the clinic and sat while they went and did their visit with a mental health professional. And that right there made the difference. And so we need more leaders, NCOs and officers alike, to be like him, to do more than just care, more than just, "Oh, it's a good cause," or, "Yeah, you need help," but to show up.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, that's a great story with that guy. That's a true leader right there. And man, on the field, you were a leader, Greg, for the Army football team, and now you're leading in the right direction with this cause. And we really appreciate you having you on for a few minutes to talk about it. And man, I hope to see you at Mikey Stadium on September 11th, completing that 1800th mile, right?
Yes. Exactly, man. I'm excited too, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Like always, go Army, beat Navy.